So, Cats and Paul for the locker room with my co-host Fajardo. How's it going, Fajardo?
Good, man. Good. Living another day. Can't complain about that.
So, let's just rip the Band-Aid off, get right into the subject matter. Is the NHL only for white people?
Oof. I want to say that majorly it is, but as time has grown, as society has grown, I believe that there are people of other racial descents that have learned to appreciate the game, have also contributed to the game, and I think that as hockey continues to grow, it will only begin to scratch the surface on diversity over the next 5 to 10 years.
I mean, I think, and the reason why we're kind of having this conversation is saw a couple of comments, but I've also just seen some conversation regarding the NHL, right? Like, there's the big leagues, right? Like the NFL, the NFL, NBA, even the MLB, right? They have far more diverse in their population, in their players, and in the fan base compared to the NHL, where statistics are a little up and down because some players get sent up, sent down, but around 5 to 7% of players in the NHL, outside of that 5 to 7%, it's majority white. Majority white players, majority white fan base. And it's kind of a good dialogue to have. Like, why is it that the NHL, or just hockey in general, is such a white predominant sport? And kind of having a dialogue like, hey, like, what got someone like you into hockey, right? Like, because we've even had these conversations, obviously, off air, just us ripping, talking on the phone.
Yeah.
And, as someone that kind of grew up with hockey as my main sport, right? 2 years old, I was learning to skate, played hockey since I was the age of 3. It was like a lifestyle. Whereas I feel like yours was a far different background. So what got you into hockey and what made you fall in love with the sport?
All right. So, obviously, I'm not white.
Really?
Yeah, I know, right? Throws people off all the time. But let's see. My sports growing up, I was a top baseball player until I had an issue with I think it was my tendon on my right arm, which is my throwing arm. I was like an all-star shortstop, second baseman. Then I ended up becoming a professional cyclist. I was ranked number 3 in New York, ranked number 36 in the nation. By the time I was 14, and I played some football at that time, and I was looking for a team to play for, but the high school I originally attended did not have a football team. Was Norman Thomas in the middle of Manhattan. They did not have a football team, so I couldn't play there. Eventually, the following year, I transferred to Christ the King, which a lot of people know for basketball. They also have a very good football team. When I got there, it was too late for tryouts. Now, with that being said, I got there and I was like, all right, next year I'm a try out and everything, whatnot. But one of my best friends in high school, and he's still very one of my best friends now, Billy Carreri, shout out to you. He's white. He said, have you ever watched hockey? And I said what any person of color at my age would say. That's some white sport. That's not for me. And in all honesty, that was the frame of thought that we had back then, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about like 96, 97. It was like, hockey's for white people. That's not for anybody of color. And he's like, nah, don't worry about that, man. I'm telling you, you're gonna like it, especially if you like football. And the way that he made me picture it was, he said, when you play football, you get snot hits, right? Those are some of the best hits.
Yeah.
You knock the snot out of somebody, it's crazy, right? He's like, now imagine that all the time. And I'm like, what do you mean all the time? Like, that doesn't happen all the time. He's like, it's a lot of the time you can get those hits. And I'm like, okay, now you piqued my interest. So I said, all right, cool. He's like, watch MSG right? The Rangers play. I'm like, the Rangers. All right, cool. Fine, I'll watch it. So I started watching that night. It was I can't remember they were playing, but I remember the one player that literally made me say, I'm going to try this game. It was Darren Langdon, and he was out there just beasting on everybody, hitting everybody that moved. I think he even scored a goal that night. And, you know, for me, I didn't know that he's not a goal scorer, but he scored a goal. So I'm like, oh, man, he scores goals. He's hitting everybody. And he had a fight that game. So I'm just like, oh, man, yeah, this is something I definitely think I can get into. But I've never skated a day in my life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So for me, I had to learn from at the age of 14, 15, I'm learning what you learned at 3.
Yeah, which is, it's very late, but it's actually funny though. I know some guys like that started 12, 13, 14, even 15, and they got into the passion of the sport and they kind of fell in love with it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, so Billy lived like a couple of blocks from me, and he had like this really long driveway. He had a net and all, like he had everything, right? So for me, I was in a situation where I'm a little less fortunate than most, right? Don't let all this fool you, right? I've worked very hard to get all these things, but in reality, I didn't have the money to play hockey right off the bat just like that. Hockey's very expensive.
Yes, it's way too expensive. Yeah.
So and I think that's one of the things that doesn't allow people of color who have a different format of life going into things, where you pay for things that you know you're going to use instead of paying for things that you might be willing to use.
True.
Right? So, you know, my mom, man, thanks to my mom, she said, all right, cool, I'll get you a pair of rollerblades. All right, cool. That within the week, I had rollerblades, I had a stick and gloves. And Billy graciously, who, you know, he was on a traveling juniors team. Like, he was actually good. He, you know, he played cross country, everything. He was playing against some of the people who are in the NHL now. Yeah. You know, so he definitely was a top tier player. And he would take every day, after school, we'd meet up. I'd go to his house. He'd show me, you know, he'd help me with skating. He'd show me how to puck handle. He'd show me the basics of everything I needed to know to play hockey. And then eventually, you know, we were able to get started, you know, a petition in our school to actually start an ice hockey team, because Christ the King did not have a hockey team. And if you go to Christ the King now, they don't have a hockey team. Like, they don't even, I don't even think they have that at the entrance of the gymnasium anymore. But we had a petition for it, and parents had to come out of pocket to fund a school team, like the whole thing. Yeah, it was, you know, a lot of money, right? And we had to be willing to invest. So we also had to get I guess like a general manager. We got Mr. Padalino, who was the husband of our history teacher. Well, our, I guess, junior year history teacher. It was her husband, and, you know, he was willing to put everything together and, you know, get us information and try to schedule everything, you know, ice time, where we would be playing, and then, you know, we were able to get it started, and we got started. We got ice time at what is it, the world, what is it, it's Flushing Meadow Park, I think it's called. Yeah. I forgot what it's, but it has a particular name. So we're like, all right, cool, we go there. I didn't know the difference, whether it was a high-end rink, or, I mean, I know now, but it was an absolutely garbage rink, right? Size, it was way too wide and way too short. But, you know, hey, you want to play the game. So we started practicing there, and we got into a summer tournament in Staten Island where we started playing. And I got to say, the moment where everything changed for me, where it wasn't me just trying or liking the sport, where I really fell in love. I was about 5'5" maybe at that point, and we were playing in Staten Island with this team. They had this one kid, a defenseman. At that point, I think I was a center. Yeah. No, actually, I was a defenseman. I switched to defense, and there was this kid that was like 6'5", right? 200 and something pounds. Big kid, right? The puck squeaks out, and it goes, and I go to play it back, at least to play it back to give my defenseman a chance to get the puck. This kid crushes me against the boards, and I felt something inside of me snap. Not a bone snap or anything like that, but like just like a switch turned on. And when he hit me against the boards, and let me tell you, it was one of those like really hard hits, but afterwards, I just felt like I was on fire. I was just like, oh yeah, I want to fucking, let's go, you know, like I just want to fight. The passion came out. Like, it was, at that point, I'm sold. Yeah. I'm sold. I gave up on football. I gave up on everything else. Hockey was a thing. So from there, you know, obvious dedication, you know, to playing hockey, learning how to play. First of all, I didn't know how to stop. Right? That's the one thing.
Remind me of that Mighty Duck movies where the player couldn't stop.
Yes, that 100%. That was me, bro. T-stopping on ice is not the same. One and two. No. You didn't want to look that foolish, right? Yeah. So, I had to learn how to stop, and well, you know, this is after that first summer season. We actually got into the league for, I guess, like you know, high schools and so on. We actually got in, and we started playing some notable teams, some notable players. We also had a very, very courteous situation from Brian Leach and the New York Rangers, because our phys ed teacher in my high school in Christ the King was Miss O'Neill, who is Brian Leach's wife now. But right. Back then they were just dating. He actually, I think when I was a junior, he actually popped the question in the library of Christ the King. It was like this whole big thing. But at that point, I had no clue who the fuck he was. I was just like, oh, Brian Leach, all right, yeah, I saw him on the TV. Obviously, they won the Stanley Cup and everything that year and all that. But I was just like, okay, cool, he's a good player. That, you know.
Yeah. So didn't know he was a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah.
It was considered one of the best defensemen.
Yeah. What the fuck did I know? You know. Yeah. So, he helped us out. He made that bridge between Christ the King and the Rangers. He helped us get sponsorships from CCM, Bauer, iTech. You know, Bauer helped us out with some gloves. iTech helped us out with some helmets. CCM helped sponsor our jerseys. Our jerseys are really, really, really nice, and you know, it was one of those things where we got help from those companies, thanks to Brian Leach. But then he took it to the next level as well. So all hockey teams, they get like trainers, ice skating trainers, you know, for practice during the week when they're at home. And every time that they were at home, you know, the days that they were going to play, they didn't use these trainers, but they were still paying for these trainers. So what they did was they would say, hey, we have trainers on these this week, this day and this day, they're going to be available because we have games. Schedule your ice time and use these trainers since we're paying for them anyway, so they're free to you, you know, and you guys can use them. So we had professional help on working on our edges, working on our skating, on stick handling, all those things, you know, thanks to Brian Leach and the New York Rangers. And, you know, that only amplified what we were doing. It made us it made someone like me who knew nothing about the game at that point so much better. And it really took us to a level that maybe at that age, well, for sure at that age, I didn't comprehend, right? Because we were playing some guys that, you know, that were, I guess, being courted to go into college and, you know, traveling junior teams and all that. Like, they had big names, and probably some of them made it to the NHL and so on. But, like, we were playing high-level players. It wasn't just, you know, the people playing for fun. You know, so being able to experience that, looking back, it was like, wow. At the time, I was like, I could fuck anybody up. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't realize the gravity of the situation, and I think that that's one of the things. A lot of people in sports that make it or don't make it, I think, look back on and say that they never appreciated it.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you're in it, you're in it. That's it. But you don't appreciate what you're in.
So, as someone that, you kind of went into your backstory, how you got into hockey, kind of the development going into essentially being a 14-year-old, getting to your high school program, even having the fortunate luck of having some type of association with Brian Leach coming in, help sponsor, get the team off the ground. And even you just try to learn how to stop, which is kind of funny. But with your really great experiences with the game, I have to ask you, does it bother you that around 95 to 93% of NHL players are white? Or do you think that's just a statistic and you think as time goes on, you'll have more people of different backgrounds and the NHL will be far more diverse of a product?
I definitely think that it's more of a money thing. It's more of a money thing than it is a race thing.
That's true, yeah.
You look at soccer, right, or football, depending on what part of the world you're from, right, and anybody plays that. Doesn't matter what color you are, anything at all. It all just comes down to skill. You take that money factor out of it. Eventually cleats and stuff like that are matter a little bit, but still, outside of that, there are people that are learning the game barefooted at a very young age.
That's true.
Right? And that's just because they don't need the money at that point. You're learning to play the game, that's it. Right? But obviously, hockey is international, but let's face some facts here. It is expensive. So if you're not as fortunate or you don't have the support to do those things, right, you're not going to be able to even really look at the game as something you can do. And most people, they follow sports because they love it, because they know that they can do it when they're young.
Yeah, I mean, I think unless you grow up in a northern climate, and that's why a lot of Canadian hockey players thrive, right? Like, even if they're 2 or 3 and their family's not making a ton of money, they can just go out on a pond. They can just go out on the lake, frozen, and not have to worry. Like, I know a good friend of mine, she's from Edmonton, Alberta. It gets really cold out there, so it's pretty frozen out there. But in Canada, due to a lot of the climate, you don't have to be from a really rich background. Like, they have public outdoor rinks where you just go and skate. You can go skate on a pond, skate on a lake, things of that nature. And the biggest problem I've seen with people getting into hockey is the price. I mean, even people in upper middle class, right? Parents are going to be like, well, do I really want to be spending a few grand for equipment that eventually I'll have to pay another few grand for, right, to keep my child into the game? And kind of going into this line of questioning, like, what do you believe can happen to maybe diversify the sport? Maybe not just within race, like, you just kind of eloquently mentioned that it's not just a race thing, but within different, like, income brackets. Like, do you think it's just solely that the equipment needs to be worked on so it's less expensive but still safe? What measures can be done to have hockey become more inclusive, whether that be from race, background, economic situation? What's your opinion?
So I think that there are a lot of programs out there that are trying to diversify the kinds of hockey players that you get at a very young age, right? There's a program here in New York, Hockey in Harlem, I believe it's called, and they get equipment, they get funding. New York Rangers help them out, but they also get funding from many other places to enlarge the scope of minorities that play the game. At a young age, teaching them how to skate, teaching them about the sports, sportsmanship, everything. And they have a team and everything. I believe they have a traveling team, and it's not only for men, it's for women as well, which shout out to the new women's league coming in January. I heard that's going to be very interesting. We'll talk about that in another show. But I think it's one of those situations where people that love the game should support the game.
Yeah.
And give back as much as you can. Give back to the less fortunate. Yeah, we all have that thing. We want to be the ones that helped or sponsored a future star. That's always nice, right? But you gotta break a few eggs to get an omelet, is what they say, right? Something along those lines.
Yep.
So if you don't support even the ones that don't make it, even the ones that may not like the game, you're never gonna find the one that does. But you gotta keep on giving. You gotta do it for the love that you have for the sport, and realize that your passion can become someone else's passion, or maybe your passion can inspire someone to have the same type of passion that you have. But the only way the game is gonna grow is by literally the help of the community that exists at this point, and spreading that love, right? Yeah. But yeah, obviously some of the things you mentioned, maybe having it where equipment's a little more available to the less fortunate, or people that go, and I hate saying it that way, right? Because I don't like to classify people by how much they earn, their living status, things like that. But it is a reality when it comes to a game like hockey.
It's expensive.
It's extremely expensive, and not everyone can do it. But if the prices were a little bit less, or having some hockey shops that I've seen where they recycle hockey equipment, like if I grew out of hockey equipment, I can donate it here, and they'll clean it, they'll do all the things, because we all know how hard it is to get that hockey stench off the equipment. Let's be honest, we know that thing is horrific.
Good old bottle of Febreze, baby.
Oh man,
that's what I had to do in high school, man.
But you take some of this equipment and they'll donate it to a place, or they'll sell it at a very low cost that's affordable for for some of the people who are less fortunate financially. Doing things like that, I think will help expand the sport, but also being ambassadors of the game, introducing the game to people who maybe thought it wasn't their thing, like Billy Carreri, who introduced hockey to me. Forever grateful to Billy, because for me it wasn't a thing. Like I said, for me the whole picture was, hey, that's a white person sport. That's not for me. I'll play basketball. I play football. I play something where someone who looks like me is actually a visual option.
So I think one of the interesting things, right, and this is kind of a memory of mine that really stands out to, and I'm hoping at some point with this channel we can actually start like a hockey fund for kids in kind of economic situations that can't play. Like for me, a situation, like I've always loved hockey, played it since I was like 2-3 years old. My father, I fell in love with the game pretty early on, and I was always kind of blessed to be in a situation. My father was a very hardworking man. But what stood out to me when I got older, and I found this out when I got older, is I played on travel teams my whole life, right? I played on elite teams, travel teams. I would go Yankee Conference, things like that. Go state to state, play other really good teams. And there was a tournament that we were going to go to Lake Placid, obviously the famous 1980s Miracle on Ice situation. And one of the kids on the roster wouldn't have been able to afford to go because it was going to cost a few $1,000s with all the fees, the hotels. And my father, being the stand-up man that he is, ended up paying for their whole trip. And it stuck out to me when I learned that as an older, that like when I got older, like, that's the type of situation I want to be in. I don't think any kid should be left behind that really wants to pursue a passion. And maybe some could argue, oh, well, it's just a tournament. But like, it was something I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. Having those impactful memories, being on the ice, being in the championship game. And it's something that will never be taken away from me. It's something I remember very fondly. I remember like going at like 9-10 at night. They had an outdoor rink with a whole speed skating rink on the outside of it, skating on it and just having fun. Like, I would love for us to, do the same thing for kids, maybe in tougher economic situations where we can make them have very lasting and fond memories of the game of hockey. But I do think the sport needs to get a little bit cheaper in some regard. I understand that ice time is always going to be expensive because the refrigerated units are going to cost a certain amount, so these facilities are going to want to make some type of capital on that money, or some type of capital, I should say, some type of revenue on their ice. But the equipment itself, it's got to get cheaper. If the game wants to grow, it's got to get cheaper. We had a program where, like, hand-me-down program where people, when they grew out of the certain equipment, would hand it down. I think that can kind of help maybe lessen some of the costs. But for me, just overall, hockey's such an expensive sport. I'm not sure we'll ever be the biggest or the greatest sport in a lot of people's eyes just due to the barriers around it. But I firmly do believe if you watch the game and play it and understand it, most people will generally like fall in love with it like you did.
Yeah, no, definitely. You know, and sometimes it's coaches and hockey players that help make a difference. My old coach, Pat Bowler, obviously, you know, you coach us very well. You did a lot for us. We obviously feel some kind of way towards you. Obviously, for some reason, we should have won the championship our last year. We'll leave it there. But you know, he always took the extra time to skate with me, to try to show me how to stop. You know, how to puck handle, how to position myself. And you can tell it was a passion of his, and he was hard on me. That his passion wasn't just him being a dick, right? It was his passion, and him being hard on me was just him having the passion for the game and seeing that I was a capable body to do what I had to do. You know, he even got help from Alexei Kovalev, who gave him, you know, he asked him, like, you know, he told him, hey, my guy's struggling, you know, you have any ideas? Because Pat also worked for the Rangers at that point, still works for the Rangers. He's a very good coach, and he works for the Wolfpack at the moment. So he asked Alexei Kovalev, you know, some advice. Alexei Kovalev played a mind trick. Obviously I realized this many years later, but he gave Pat his pair of skates because he happened to be my size. Told Pat, give him these skates, right? Tape above the ankles, and he'll start getting how to stop very soon. Just keep teaching him the way you're teaching him, right? Obviously, all I heard was, I'm getting Alexei Kovalev skates, right? Let's be honest, I'm a kid. He's on TV. It's a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely, bro.
You know what I mean? So he came, he gave me the skates, he gave me the advice. He said, do this, whatever. Within about 3 weeks, I was able to begin the stopping process. And I had a name before that, which was Crash, because it didn't matter who you were. I was crashing into referees. I was crashing into my own teammates, the other team, the bench, flipping over to make line changes. I didn't care. Crash was my name. But once I learned how to stop, I proceeded to get the name Freight Train, thanks to my teammates, because I was killing people on purpose at that point.
Crash is iconic. That's an iconic.
Yeah, you know, Crash Bandicoot, that's what they named me after. It was fun. You know, even the parents would be like, Crash, go get it. I was like, okay, yeah, it's a thing, right? But that's the other part to it, is like the love that your child or a child is going to have for the game is going to instantly like give a parent just that love for the game.
Yeah.
My mother, Ecuadorian, ice is as foreign to her, you know what I mean, that as space is to many. And my love for the game made her love the game. She loved the game as much, and even sometimes even more than me. Like when I was like depressed about this or that, she loved the game, and she still kept pushing. And all the parents were like that, right? Because you want the best for your kid. And it's not... there are some parents that are like, oh, you know, my kid should be the best and all this. But there was a lot of parents that just love the game because their kids love the game.
Yeah.
And
which is beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's something that when you experience it, like, there's no words for it. I can talk about it for days, but you need to experience that. And that can only happen as, you know, people start learning about the game, people start enjoying the game, people find that love for the game. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those situations where you want all this to kind of like fall into place. And yes, I can't wait until we start doing those things, like, you know, maybe creating scholarships for players at a high school level, you know, for a school that may unfortunately not have all the funding, or maybe a school that does have good funding but the player doesn't have funding, things like that, helping people find the game. That's why I think that this channel exists, is because it's a passion that you can't force. It's a passion that you're gonna have, or you're gonna learn to have, right? And I'm glad to be able to, you know, somewhat be an ambassador of the sport. You know, obviously I'm not your common fan, right? But I think that I am a fan, and any true fan will understand that a fan is a fan, regardless of skin, financials, or anything, right? You just got to get there. And I hope that people really see the opportunity to make a difference in young people's lives and people's lives, period. As a matter of fact, I challenge us to be able to take someone who doesn't know anything about hockey and introduce them to the sport.
Yeah.
That's what I challenge us.
I've done that with a few people. I know you have, and some people are receptive, some not so much. But I mean, kind of let's end it like on a good note, right? And this is what I kind of want to identify here as, right? We have great players in the NHL like Evander Kane, right? He's gonna be bringing more diversity into it. A very skilled player in his own right, Keandre Miller, right? In New York City himself.
Yes. One
of the best I personally believe he's probably your best defensive D-man on that roster. He has a lot of good offensive upside. You know, you do see diversity happening in the NHL. I just think it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of it's economic, but also some of it's negative stigmas that some people that are non-white have about the game.
Yes.
And as soon as people realize that it's a really good sport to be engaged with, it's a lot of fun, I do think we'll see a lot more people of various different shades of color throughout the NHL and throughout pretty much every major league across the world. I mean, pretty much that's all I got to say. I think we had a really good conversation here. Just one last question before we go. If there was one thing, and maybe it could be something that we mentioned, if there's one thing that you could do right now and you believe would help have more people love the game or more people fall in love with the game, what would it be?
If money wasn't
money wasn't an option, we won the lottos, you know,
I would start a hockey team from, you know, at multiple stages of, you know, the like 5 to 10 age range, and then from 10 to the high school level, and then high school, like start a team that you know encompasses all those ages, to teach all those ages, right, in places where it's not such a big thing. So like going to Brooklyn, right, going to Queens, obviously I'm talking about a place where I live,
right.
You know, going to Brooklyn and saying, all right, cool, we're going to introduce these to kids, to parents. Listen, they don't have anything to do with it. Try to get kids from there involved. Obviously, I'm not going to negate anybody, but try to grow it in the areas where it's least common that you're going to get a fan or a player from. And like instilling, hey, here's a sport. Let's try it. Let's get your kids into it. Let's build something here. Build something special. And kind of just do that in any place that doesn't have it yet. you know, and even doing it internationally. Like, you know, if I had the money, I would go down to a place like Ecuador where I have heritage and say, hey, we don't have a national team. We don't even have any teams. Let's start this thing up. And let's start getting athletes to do something else. Maybe they weren't good enough for you know, football, soccer, however you want to call it. And maybe they weren't good for baseball. But maybe they're good enough to play ice hockey. You know what I'm saying? Because it isn't that they're not skilled. Maybe their skill set is different.
Yeah, I mean, and you could even maybe have some of those really good soccer players find a passion, like maybe switch to hockey. You know. So, but I thought this was a fun conversation, really kind of deep, thought-provoking. I appreciate you coming on and us having this conversation. We're going to be bringing a lot more videos with me and him.
Yes, I'm back. I'm back, people.
He's back.
FCDS, thanks for screwing up my life. Appreciate you guys. But
I like how we both had major disagreements with the places that we just left. So.
Yes, sir.
So he's in a manager position. I got things down the pipe, but I appreciate everybody that came through. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're about 36 minutes in, so if you're here, you're definitely enjoying the content. So I'm Captain Paul. That's Fajardo. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace.